Recording. So welcome. This is episode number. Which episode is this? What number are we at, Shane?
Is this 11 or 12? I'm losing track.
Yeah, I believe it's 12 actually that we're on now. So, and we're going to have a bit of a chat, and then I think we're going to talk about astronomical logging. I really had hoped I'd tee up like a chainsaw or something here to run, but that's not the logging we're going to talk about today. But how's the Takahashi 76 working for you these days?
Really good. It is just a fantastic telescope. It is so crisp. It is such a joy to use. The light weight of it makes it a joy to mount. And I've read this before about higher end telescopes, how they kind of punch above their aperture.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I feel that with this 76 millimeter. Like the image scale and the detail that I'm able to see on the moon, and a little bit of Venus here as it's getting narrower in terms of its crescent. It is so good. The only complaint I have is the weather hasn't been too great lately,
No,
so I haven't been
no,
able
it
to use it
hasn't.
as much as I would like.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sort of on. That's actually a good point, and it's one of those things that I would hear of and kind of be attracted to when I was getting started in astronomy so many years ago now. But one of them is this business of some smaller scopes seemingly outperforming, and I believe anyway that there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that well, of course, or maybe even a few reasons. One is that the telescopes are smaller, have less mass, and they cool faster. So a cool telescope is going to provide better images than a larger telescope that's still cooling down, because those heat waves coming off, they really impact the crispness of the image, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like if the telescope optics are not acclimatized to the outside temperature, it doesn't matter how good of a telescope it is or how good your collimation is or any of that stuff, because the views are not going to be all that great.
Yeah, and one of the other things is that it's a little easier, I think, maybe to make a higher quality, very small telescope than it is to make a larger, inexpensive telescope, right? That might cost the same, but sort of by millimeter inch of aperture, you are paying more for these smaller instruments for sure. But that quality, in my experience anyway, and I think you and I have kind of run some comparisons on this between fairly expensive optics and less expensive optics. And when you have that higher quality, what happens is that the seeing, the atmospheric disturbances as they enter the telescope are less amplified, or maybe another way to put it is through optics that have more errors and aren't as well corrected. In my experience, anyway, they seem to amplify any kind of bad seeing that is in the atmosphere or cool down that's left in the scope. I don't know if you've kind of experienced the same or.
I that's one that I haven't really paid a lot of attention to, but I can understand why that would make sense for sure. One thing about just my experience with equipment is a lot of the refractors I've used in the past would be considered a little bit of a faster refractor, in that f5 to 6 range.
Yeah.
And this Takahashi's a 7 point something, and that helps a lot too in terms of the optic. It's easier on the optics. It's easier to produce a really good optic the longer the focal length is. And doing some research and reading about my passion or interest in classic telescopes, is there's a belief that a longer focal length telescope with the depth of focus that it provides allows you to kind of overcome some bad seeing
Mm.
than what you'd be able to with like a faster short focal length telescope. So maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, because if you think about with the longer focal length telescope, or longer focal ratio, maybe is what we should be saying.
Yeah.
You have a longer sweet spot where the telescope will come to focus. And if you think about that bad seeing or disturbances in the atmosphere that cause what we call bad seeing, and almost like the atmosphere pulsating, a pulsating atmosphere is going to pull you in and out of focus. And if that sweet spot is longer, then you should theoretically just notice that less, right? Because it has more room to move within your optical trains, that you don't need to refocus, and you're gonna maintain that sort of sharper image for longer periods of time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just kind
So
of makes sense to me.
yeah, 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 absolutely. So how's your journey going with first light with your new telescope?
Yeah, it's a little bumpy because, of course, I haven't been able to get tube rings, and you're in a similar boat.
Hmm.
And so what we did is I lent you my TAC clamshell that fits yours in one of the telescopes I have, and then you were able to get up and running, and then sort of fortuitously, our mutual friend Mike, he lent me his clamshell for the TAC 100 DC that I just bought, and that fits beautifully. However, it's really strange how you're supposed to mount that to a dovetail rail. It's only got one M6 threaded hole in the bottom of the TAC clamshell, and so when I attempted just to attach to my Vixen dovetails using that, of course, it just kind of droops, right? I mean, it's unusable. It's not like the telescope or anything was at any risk, but I put it up. I thought, well, it kind of works the way I have it set up with my little dovetail rail that you have. But I kind of screwed it on really tight. And I think because that dovetail rail is so short, and it's always going to sit pretty much on axis with the Aldaz mounts, it's not a problem. But with this telescope being just about twice the weight, and you're not going to be right on axis with a longer dovetail, and that's kind of how I want to use it. It just kind of starts to rotate around, which I had always kind of been concerned about, and had read some stuff online, and had never experienced the issue with my little TAC the way I have it set up there. But that won't work with the larger TAC at all. Like, it
Mm,
just didn't
yeah,
work.
just too much weight.
Yeah, too much weight, and I think it's a combination of both the weight and the and being off that sort
Hmm.
of LDAS axis. Like, if it's right on axis, then you're not really introducing another, um, I guess, axis of rotation. And so as soon as you have that, you're done. So that's out. So then I was messing around with it. I think I got a spot where maybe I should still be able to get it mounted up in test mode, but I'm a little concerned about that. So I did post online, and a few people wrote back, and it's kind of funny. Like, you would think, like, so this is a clamshell that goes around the telescope instead of tube rings, and it's got a variety of bolt holes on the bottom, and there's two standards in rails to attach either your rings or a clamshell mount like this, essentially attaching the telescope to your mount, and then there's two formats of rails that you can attach your rings or clamshell to, and that's the Vixen or the Losmandy formats. And I think these ones are more or less designed for the Losmandy format. And it's strange because they've got two other holes. They're just open holes, and apparently you're supposed to get this larger 5/16-18 set of bolts to pass through those, and then you can thread in through from the telescope side into the rail, versus on the Vixen side of the rail, you're coming in from the back side of the rail and going into the clamshell towards the telescope. Apparently, it seems odd to me that you would need to go two ways, right? Why not just recess the bolts and then just pass them through that way, and then just have the clamshell threaded for those on that side? But it's odd. The clamshell isn't threaded. It's just they're just holes. So you're just supposed to pass through there and then bolt into the rail. It's pretty confusing, and if you dig around enough, you can find, sure enough, like, lots of experienced people that have had this problem as well. But it is super frustrating.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about, both of our challenges of finding rings or, slash clamshells to mount our telescopes and how challenging this is becoming. And I said, it's, I never would have guessed this. The hard part should be getting the telescope, not the rings to mount the darned thing, but
Yeah.
here we are. So,
Yeah, and even with, like, so the you're using my my ring. And again, like I've, I wasn't a fan of these rings. And I think I'd even mentioned that, like sort of, kind of getting out in front of this in the podcast, even where I'm not a big fan of the Takahashi clamshells because, like people always say, well, it shouldn't be a problem as long as you kind of bolt it on tight, even if it's just one bolt. But then right away I experienced the problem with this new one. And even if I get these bolts, I have a set in the mail, apparently, and they should get here tomorrow or the next day, and then I'm gonna see if they work. But I'm actually not convinced that they're either gonna thread in properly or what. Like, and the odd part is that looking on, like I bought and all this is brand name, high quality stuff, right? It's not like we're not cheaping out here, man. But the Losmandy plate that I have, it's a Losmandy brand, which is also the format for the other style, but this is a Losmandy branded Vixen format. And when I looked at their specs online, they say it's a 516-16, which, and I don't know much about this stuff. Somebody told me, sort of schooled me a bit online and said, well, the dash number is how many threads per inch. And so that would require 16 threads per inch. Okay. Yep. So I'm like, great. Like, sounds good to me. Like, I don't really know anything about this stuff, these threads per inch, right? I'm, a tech guy and a philosopher, not a home builder or any kind of like handy construction style person at all. I know you're much better at that stuff than I am. So then I started looking, and there's no such thing as a 516-16 that I could find anyway. Maybe if you had it like custom made. And then kind of looking around, and I can't remember, it was a post I read somewhere, or somebody replied, and they're like, oh yeah, that's just a typo on the Losmandy plate site. And I'm like, well, like, could this be any more challenging? Like, here I am just trying to sort this out, yet even on the manufacturer site, Losmandy is a well-known, reputable producer of high quality telescopic parts, but they've made some sort of typo there. So that's been its own challenge. So yeah, we'll see when these bolts arrive tomorrow. I am a little bit reluctant to try to do much until they arrive, and they'll either work or they won't work. But I did talk to a couple more telescope stores about trying to source rings, and sometimes I don't get it's during this COVID-19 pandemic, and I realized there's a lot of bigger problems in the world than whether Chris can mount his telescope or Shane can mount his telescope. But
yes,
it really is super frustrating. Often they don't write back, or they write back and say, when I talked to one company, they said, oh, like, we can sell what we have, but we can't make anything. And that seems to be a little bit of a theme, because for whatever reason, there's either been a run on product, or just due to, social distancing. And I'm happy people are staying safe in that. But it seems really weird that like not many places would have stuff in stock. So kind of what I'm hoping is that these bolts work, and that Mike, who I believe Mike bought the parallax rings some time ago, and that's kind of where I was getting a bit confused over who had the parallax rings. Now I couldn't remember if it was you or Shane, or you had them on order or what. But what I'm kind of hoping is that the bolts that I have coming tomorrow work, and then I can just maybe talk to Mike again. I did give him like 4 pounds of shrimp as thank you for loaning me the tack clamshell. So maybe my good gesture. He did not want to take the shrimp. I don't eat shrimp. I just don't care for it. I'm more of a lobster person myself. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that he will just let me keep it at least until the end of the pandemic, if I can't get rings sorted out. So
trials crazy. And tribulations. I guess the moral of the story is, when you go down some of these paths, expect some challenges occasionally. Not everything comes together nicely with a bow.
Yeah, well, I've never had, I don't recall, I've never had a telescope work out of the box, so to speak. Not that I can ever recall. So sometimes it's been my mistake, like when I bought my first Takahashi and I talked to Wayne at FeatherTouch, and he told me I should go with this focuser, and I said, no, I want that focuser. And he's like, that's not going to work. And I'm like, yeah, it will work. And I talked to this person online and they said, this is the one that I have and it works perfectly and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, great. And I got it. And it didn't work. I was not able to reach focus. I didn't have enough out focus by like maybe 8 millimeters or something. And
Oh,
so I had a 2-inch, and I thought, that's no problem. I have a 2-inch extension. I'll just use this for those eyepieces. And that was the 2-inch extension all the way in was too much. It was just like maddening. So I ended up sending it back to Wayne, and he, rejigged it for like $90 or something. So it's the most expensive lightweight feather touch he's ever made because I didn't listen to him in the first place. And that's fine, like you can run into stuff like that. But
yeah.
this, which is seemingly just a very simple thing, 95 millimeter tube rings, apparently unobtainium at the present
Yes,
time.
yes.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so I really haven't been able to do that much stargazing at the present time. But the good news is, if I can get the TAC clamshell to work, then I'll probably just use that, and instead of spending my money on tube rings, I'll have some budget left over to actually maybe do a mount upgrade or something like that earlier than later.
Oh yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
So, do you want to go in? You have anything to add about that? Did you get out observing last night? Were you observing last night, or?
No, we had some other plans, and it was kind of cloudy early on. I know it cleared. I don't know what time, but no, I didn't go out last night. I had one short session earlier in the week,
Yeah.
with the moon and the new Takahashi, but this time I went without the 1.7 times extender.
Oh yeah.
Just to see what the telescope does in its native configuration. And, it was fantastic. The moon was probably, I think, like 98% full moon.
Yeah.
So a little less contrast, along the terminator at that stage, but still great viewing. And I was really impressed.
Yeah, well, again, I don't think there's any point in you buying the extender, because you can certainly live with it. I mean, it's such, like, you're not really hampered at all by not having the extender. And then for those whatever, like, particular instances where for whatever reason you want one, like, I've got it, right? And the only time that I really use it for the most part is when I'm teaching my class or like some other sort of particular circumstance, right?
Mm.
It just doesn't make sense. And this is, I think, a rather expensive item, in my opinion anyway. I forget what they cost, but it's not inexpensive. And I just don't think it's worth it for you to spend the money on that. I would, much rather you spend the money on me,
Yeah, hey, some shrimp. Maybe I'll get you a bag of shrimp.
Yeah, give me some shrimp. Give me some shrimp. Excuse me. So yeah, so there's that. Let's see, what else am I up to these days? So I'll tell you, I bought, I like books. I read. I guess I'm the reader out of the two of us. And I've been reading this visual, lunar, and planetary astronomy book by Paul Abel out of the UK.
Okay. And
And
how do you like it?
yeah, well, this is one of the Patrick Moore Practical Astronomy series. And I'll tell you, I have other books from the series. I'm not going to knock anybody. When you put out, it's like anything, when you put out a lot of anything, there's going to be some that are really good and maybe some that maybe aren't quite as good. But I'll tell you, I think this is the best one in the series. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Wow.
And I can't recall if I'd even heard of it before. But I was on the sketching forum on Cloudy Nights, and I saw some sketches by Paul Abel, and I believe I recalled his name, whether I actually did or not. I thought, oh, I think that guy was actually on the Patrick Moore Sky at Night back, when Patrick Moore was running it before his death in 2013, and Paul's sketches are phenomenal, like just beautiful, beautiful sketches. And as you know, that's something that I've kind of taken up in recent years. And I thought, well, he's a good sketcher. He's putting this stuff out. Maybe there's a few items I can pick up in this book, because you kind of get to the point now that we've been doing this for decades where, you've kind of learned a lot at this point.
Mhm.
And it can be more difficult to find a text that will teach you as much after you do this for this long. However, this book is awesome, and he explains stuff. Now he does talk about sketching and some other things in this, and I think that is more of the focus of the book. But he also just explains like the observation of the planets, and it has some of the best diagrams for explaining what you're seeing in the night sky with regard to the planets that I've ever seen. I haven't seen it explained as well, and that wasn't really in the reviews or anything. So even sitting last night on the sofa as I was reading this, I said to my wife, I said, "This is really this is really good." And I have hundreds of astronomy books, as you know, and
Mhm.
I think this is one of the best books that I've actually read on astronomy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a beginner book. This is definitely, getting into to more of the advanced stuff. But I'm reading stuff that I kind of knew, and stuff about like you'll read things like, or you hear things like inferior conjunction and superior conjunction and dichotomy and all this stuff, and I kind of more or less know what they mean, but the way he explains them in them with these little diagrams, just beautiful, just perfect, right? I'm like, oh yeah, that like really, that's a great way to show it and explain it. And I'm not going to get into all that, and it would be very difficult to do with a diagram like in a podcast. But if anybody was interested in observing the planets, I would definitely recommend Visual Lunar and Planetary Astronomy by Paul G. Abel from the Patrick Moore Astronomy series. I think it's just a perfect book. Yeah. So,
Wow. That sounds really good. I just added it to my Amazon wish list. And would you say, like, I know you're a paper guy, I think, for the most
yeah,
part.
I've
Like, you
got the
like
paper book.
physical
Yeah.
books. Do you think this would translate okay onto a Kindle, or do you really need the paper edition?
Well, I don't really buy ebooks very much.
Mhm. Okay, fair enough.
Only when I can't get it. But I mean, go ahead, buy the Kindle edition if you're someone that likes to read on a device. I use it as an opportunity just not to be reading, not to be spending more time in front of a screen.
Mhm.
And then B, sometimes, and we've talked about this before, even though you're more of a Kindle user or something, there's some books, and maybe this is what you're referring to, that you just want to be able to maybe take out into the field or have close by when you're observing. And then when you have those bright screens, that can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and well, and some books are great reference books, whether it's diagrams or sketches. And I find like a Kindle or an ebook doesn't translate well to like that type of reference material, because it's nice to be able to flip open the book to page 182 or whatever, to find the information you're looking for quickly, and then off you go. But
Yeah,
the thing I do like about the Kindle is when we go on our camping trips to dark skies, I can bring all of Burnham's Celestial Handbook, all three volumes, on one little Kindle, which is kind of nice.
yeah, that is. Now, just kind of like flipping through it really quick, like just so you know, he does have a lot of really good diagrams showing like some of the planetary detail and stuff, and he actually has a really good moon map in here as well. Um, it's a hand drawn moon map. Just looking really quick. Doesn't really say. Oh yeah, it was from somebody in the British Astronomical Association drew this, and it's quite nice. Whether or not I would use that at the eyepiece, I don't know,
Yeah.
but just like the information in the book, it's excellent, top notch. So
Okay.
definitely good.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Um, and in the ping pong style of this podcast, where we really never have a plan and we just start talking, but maybe let's stick on this topic of books here for a little bit. Um, Again, you have an incredible astronomy library. When it comes to atlases of the sky, how does Interstellarum rank against some of the others like Uranometria, the Pocket Atlas from Sky and Telescope? Um, I don't know any of the common ones. How do you like them? Which one's your favorite?
So I believe you just bought the Interstellarum. Is
I
that?
did, which
Yeah.
is kind of selfishly why I'm asking.
Okay, yeah. So this is another star atlas, or another work by a guy named Ronald Stoyan, I think is his name. Am I right there? Is that
You are right. Yep.
okay? Because I'm just pulling this off the top of my head, because you only just told me this virtually before we started our recording. I love everything Ronald Stoyan has done. I think he is phenomenal. Again, like hits it out of the park, and I think he hit it out of the park with Interstellarum. He has a couple other books out there as well, or Start with the Star Atlas. The one that I have Interstellarum, and I think I have the Field Atlas as well. I think so. And is this the one that has the pink cover?
No, that's the guide.
Oh, okay, the
This
guide.
is the full-on Deep Sky Atlas. But the Field Edition has spiral binding, and I think everything's laminated so that it has a little, or not laminated, but like a different style of paper.
Yeah, I think. And
So,
is this blue? Is this one with the blue cover?
well, it looks black on Amazon, but
Oh, okay.
hard to say.
Did you already have a copy of this atlas?
Not Interstellarum. I have the Field Guide,
Oh,
strangely enough.
okay, yeah. So I
Or the pink cover I have. Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah. I have both copies, and whatever copy I have, it has. Well, I have the pink copy, which is the field guide or whatever it's called, and then I have the actual atlas itself. Mine has the sort of it's almost like a powder blue cover to it. Now, I bought it when it first came out because, like I said, I really like Ronald Stoyan's work. He did the Cambridge Photographic Atlas, I believe, as well.
Oh,
With,
okay.
I forget who he did it with off the top of my head. However, I think that Cambridge Photographic Atlas is awesome. I think that's really good as well. And what they did is they did photographs of the whole night sky, and they have on sort of the one side, they have a negative, and then they've traced in all the constellations and everything and some of the brighter deep sky objects. And then and I shouldn't say that, a lot of deep sky objects and a lot of sort of off Broadway or unusual objects, like objects that typically aren't included in star atlases. And then on the other side, they just have the image. And I don't really use that as much under the night sky, but I love to sit and look at it. Like when we're down on the grasslands in a dark sky site, you'll often see me out with that book during the day. I just love to look at it. It makes me want to do observing. And the other thing with that book is that the images aren't of the sky naked eye or unaided without any optical aid. They're about magnified about 3 to 5 times, or like a really low power binocular view. So it is a little bit zoomed in, maybe like what you get through a finder scope.
Okay.
And I think it works well. Like if somebody just described that to me, I would have thought, nah, why didn't they just do it like naked eye or whatever? But the way they did it works well because you get just enough resolution to kind of really start seeing things, which is often what you get through maybe like a 5 or 6 power finder, or like those really low power binoculars that we made up. It's perfect for those, right? So, but back to Interstellarum, how does it compare to Uranometria? I honestly don't think I've even used Uranometria. I shouldn't say that. I've used it 3 times or 4 times since I got Interstellarum. I think that Interstellarum is the best atlas currently available. It is not inexpensive though, unfortunately. I think you said you get it on sale for how much?
Well, $118 Canadian, which the regular price is $280. Amazon does weird pricing. I don't know if it's like a supply demand thing, but a couple months ago, so I have Interstellarum in my wish list, and once in a while I pop in to see if there's any deals, especially if I'm, trying to get free shipping and I only have a $5 item. I'll see if there's
Are you
any
not
books.
a Prime member?
I'm not. No.
I remember life before Prime.
Yeah, well, maybe one day, when I grow up, we'll see. So a couple months ago, Interstellarum was on sale for around the same price, like $120, and I hemmed and hawed, and a couple days passed. I thought, yeah, I'll go buy that, and it was back up to the full 280. So opportunity missed. And the other day I was ordering some little spray bottles for $14. So I thought, I wonder how I can get this up to $35 for free shipping.
Yeah.
And I saw Interstellarum was on sale for $118, and didn't think twice.
Yeah, that's
looking forward to grabbing it.
Yeah, I think when I bought mine years ago, I was around the 150 or so, and well worth it. Well worth it at 150 even. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you can get it on sale like you did, that's an incredible price. Yeah.
Yeah, primarily what I've used in the field, and you've seen this 100 times, is the Sky and Telescope Pocket Atlas, which is a very inexpensive atlas. I think you can purchase that for probably around $20 Canadian,
Mm,
and it's great. It has a lot of objects, like a lifetime really worth of objects plotted in that atlas. It's it's small enough that you can have it at the telescope in your hands, and it's not going to really bother you, so it's a good reference there. And because of the inexpensiveness of it, if it gets soaked with dew, or the corners get frayed
yeah.
because things go bump in the night, I don't really care. So I've really enjoyed that one. The only issue that I maybe have with it, and we've discussed this under the night sky, is the scale of
Yeah. Yeah.
the charts just seems a little bit off. Like how it plots distances between, say, bright stars just doesn't seem to translate to how they appear in the sky. Like I always feel like the Sky Atlas plots things closer than they really are in the night sky. But it's
Yeah.
still very workable. Like I still use it a lot.
Yeah. So the Pocket Atlas is the atlas that I always recommend to beginners who take my class, or when we're meeting new people out under the night sky, doing sessions or whatever. Because I think it's pretty inexpensive, like around $25 or so, and you're getting a lot for $25. And now they have a jumbo atlas, a jumbo Pocket Atlas. So now the thing that I always find so humorous with astronomy, it seems, is you can never judge a book by its cover, and I think it has the worst cover with the best content, right up there with Binocular Astronomy by Craig Crossan, probably one of the best books written on observing with binoculars. The cover looks like something you'd see in the children's section of a library, and I mean, I'm just not a fan of the cover. Everything else is like 11 out of 10 on the scale of quality. It is so good. Yeah, but a lot of these texts, even Interstellarum, cover on that, B minus. I mean, it's just not a great cover. So you can never judge these astronomy books by their covers. Typically, the content is what you really need to evaluate them on. But the thing that separates the Pocket Atlas from most other atlases is that it is small and easy to use, A, and B, they actually drew in the lines of the constellations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's typically not a standard protocol. I actually believe Interstellarum does that as well, and it does help us. Even at this sort of stage in my astronomy journey, it's helpful. You can see those familiar patterns, and usually now, even if I just see it's those two stars and that's that part, like it's really makes for faster orientation on where I am in a constellation and maybe what I'm trying to look at. They're a little bit they're pale in the Interstellarum, but they're there and it's helpful. Yeah, I think they did an excellent job on that. Yeah, a lot of pages though. Um,
Yeah.
I almost
Yeah.
wish they had figured out a way to do it with maybe 20% fewer pages. So a lot of flipping. That's my only criticism of it, really.
My hope was when they released the Jumbo Pocket Sky Atlas that they would increase the amount of information on the pages to reduce the amount of pages and reduce the amount of flipping.
Mm.
But I believe that one, they just, like, everything is just bigger, so it's easier to read under a dark sky. But it's the same amount of pages, the exact
Yeah.
same star charts.
Yeah, well, those star charts, the way, I don't know if you know the history on that, and I could be completely wrong here because I'm interested in this stuff, but I believe the story behind that is that people at Sky and Telescope were actually taking, the old paper editions of Sky Atlas 2000. I have a couple copies of those around the house here. You probably do too.
Yep.
And they were cutting those up and getting them rebound or putting them in like binders, and apparently that was kind of the thing to do around S&T. And so eventually somebody got the bright idea that they should just kind of redo it in this sort of smaller format. But they shrank it down. And by doing so, I think that's where you got that issue with the scaling.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. There's also, I don't know if you remember, the old Triatlas.
Oh, yeah.
So
I
there's
have
a
a copy
number.
of that somewhere.
Yeah, there's a few free sky atlases available on the internet. You can download PDFs and print them out and put them in a binder, and away you go. One of the better ones was the Tri Atlas. I don't think it's available anymore. I think they shut that project down.
Mm,
But there was three versions of it, and it just depended on what magnitude you wanted, and you could download the charts, and away you went.
yep.
But I don't know if you know of any current free ones. I'm not well versed in it, but I did want to throw out that if somebody is interested in a pocket or some kind of atlas to take out under a night sky, you don't want to take your tablet or your phone,
No.
because of the brightness. It'll ruin your night vision, and
It
it
might
will
also ruin
probably,
the tablet.
well, that too, right? With the moisture. So I know a lot of these apps have like a red kind of night sky button, but it's still too bright. It'll still ruin your night vision. Um, so stay away from those. Get something that is paper that you can shine a dim red flashlight on. But anyway, with that aside, I just wanted to mention that there are a number of free PDFs out there. So again, I don't know if you know of any current ones that are free downloadable ones that are good.
No, like when the Pocket Atlas came out, and then with Interstellarum, I think that really has you covered for pretty much everything, with Uranometria filling into the higher end, and then anything beyond that, you're going to want to get something like a Sky Tools or something to that effect to be able to go to those unseemly very deep depths. I think there was Magstar 5 around as well, but trying to use a computer at the telescope is it's just an exercise in frustration, at least in my experience anyway. And then like it's so difficult, like you're never going to be able to take that right to the eyepiece versus like a chart. You can kind of at least kind of mess around, or somebody could even hold it. You could look, and we've kind of all done that a few times. Like it's a little bit more flexible versus like no one's ever going to hold your computer, and it's just not going to take that up on a ladder to whenever you get to a big telescope, and that's just not going to work. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One of the things I, excuse me, that I kind of liked about some of the free ones is if you wanted to mark up one of the charts, add some drawings or arrows to objects you wanted to observe, you could do that and then just print it off afterwards, to refresh it so it wasn't marked up.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, I suppose, and people do. Like, it's kind of neat to get it to take a look at people's atlases when they do that. So that's not without its charm. I often thought about taking like a permanent marker to mine, but one thing I'll do is like to just take a sticky note, stick that in there, and then put an arrow, and like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that's sort of like part of it. But yeah, that works pretty good as well. So yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, that was a good talk on unplanned talk on star atlases.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're essential. If anybody wants to look at the night sky, you need a star atlas to know where the objects are.
Yeah.
And there's a little thing called star hopping that we use to find these objects. Maybe we'll talk about that on a future podcast,
Yeah.
but essentially that's kind of part two of this. You find the object on the atlas, and then you star hop from bright objects to find the dim ones.
Yeah. And I got to tell you this: that when we were looking for a bedroom set, and I had all these books around, and I have a lot of atlases, which I quite like, and we went out shopping, and we discussed that maybe what we need is a better shelf system for taking care of our books. And I had all these atlases just like lying around in places in the house, and so I had them come in and put in a custom bookshelf, and had them build a chart drawer in it based on the size of my astronomy charts. So they just fit. Like Sky Atlas 2000 just fits in there. But I have my 2 copies in there: my copy of Atlas of the Heavens, my Uranometria, my photographic Atlas of the Night Sky. I have my Interstellarums. All that stuff is just like in one drawer. So it was always such a hassle when I'm going observing, and I want this atlas. Now, where did I leave that lying around the house? Like, and these are often the most expensive texts that we have. And now I just go, okay, I'll just like open the drawer and grab the one that I need, and then off to the races, so to speak. So that is one thing to keep in mind. These things are not small. The Pocket Atlas, though, really small, really handy. If people are beginners, they should go buy a copy of the Pocket Atlas from Sky and Telescope. I think that's the best one.
Agreed.
All right. So
well, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, so we'll call that a podcast, and then we'll do the next one on the logging. And
yeah,